Welcome to the Stack of Stats podcast. Pam Maldonado, joined by my girl Kelly in Vegas, who is Kelly in Nashville for Week 17 of the NFL. Kelly, what are you doing in Tennessee, girl?
Yeah, Kelly in Nash Vegas for the week. Filling in on a show called Hot Mic. As you can see, I'm sitting here on the set because we go live here in about 90 minutes. It's going to be real fiery today. I'm excited to talk some of these bowl games and get a few more things done. It's cold here, though, Pam, and that is my complaint.
I came to Austin. As you can see, I have a different backdrop. I'm not in Vegas. Also, Pam, not in Vegas. For the second week, I decided to just I'm going to book it somewhere. I came home and I also don't have a jacket. I forgot that it's cold everywhere. So I only brought my one leather jacket. And so I'm like walking around, even like down the road. Yeah, it's weird. Anyway, I should have planned better. But anyway, you said this is going to be like fiery, maybe for where you're at. Maybe this is going to be fiery for us, but again, we didn't agree literally on one game last week and we went 3-2. And somebody actually made a very good point in the comments from last week's YouTube video. They said it's actually when you guys do agree that that's like a fire pick. Hey, and the Bucs at -3 was the fire pick. That was a one game that we agreed on. And then we finished 3-2 on the week. How do you feel about week 17?
I like a lot this week, and that's really concerning because my best bets have been garbage. I think they're 7-8 on the season. I'm not sure what you have written down over there because I do so many different shows, and I try to stay really consistent with my best bets. But some of them I have to go out on Monday, some Wednesday, and then obviously today is Thursday. So sometimes things do change throughout the week. But my best bets on Bet On It are 7-8. I don't know, Pam. The NFL season has been so square. It has been so wonky. There have been so many inconsistencies, whether at the quarterback position, whether it be the Chiefs can't catch a single ball. Where I'm betting against teams that had their coach fired, or betting on teams that had their coach fired, or betting against teams that looked too good the previous week. It's just not really working out really very well for me here. It's been rather frustrating. So the fact that I like 6 games this week, a little
Ooh.
concerning.
Well, your best bets this season for this show are 8-7. Mine are 9-6-2. There's an extra one since last week I had two best bets, backing both the Colts and the Bears. Just snuck them both in. This week, I'm kind of starting to become a habit. I don't know what my best bet is at the moment, but I will decide by the end of the show. So let's just go ahead and start with first. What is your best?
Yeah, last week I ended up Pam does some stuff for VEASAN. I am in one of the VEASAN contests, and we have to pick 7 games against the spread. Well, guess what? That's really easy when I like 5 or 6 college games and I throw in my best NFL bet. But when you have to pick 7 NFL games, it's tough. And so I ended up adding 2 late to the mix, and that was the Cowboys that ended up being a loser, and the Chiefs that ended up being a loser, and that basically subsequently was my demise. Unfortunately, went 2-4, I think no, I lied, 3-4 down the stretch. And so I did get eliminated from that contest. So this week, you'd think I would be like, okay, great. I don't need to have 6 games, but I like way too much. But the Colts, I'm betting against the Raiders again, full circle there with the Chiefs pick from last week. I wanted to bet against a team that I thought looked entirely too good on Thursday Night Football against a Chargers team who really just wanted their coach fired. And that's the bottom line here. The Raiders need to come back down to earth. Okay. Aiden O'Connell, not a good quarterback, right? But he didn't need to be last week. The Raiders defense came to play. Gardner Minshew, the Indianapolis Colts, they basically hold their own cards here. They're 5-2 straight up and against the spread in their last 7 games. I'm rolling with them here. I laid the 3.5.
My question, Michael Pittman, do you think he'll be playing?
I don't think it matters. Look, honestly, we talk about this all the time. The drop-offs in the quarterback position can be significant. I don't think the drop-offs from any other position on the field really matter. The only one I will say is the caveat is the O-line position, where we've seen key guys on the offensive line or cluster injuries in that position are much more key. So I am going to go ahead and say yes, Pittman, as it stands today, is questionable. I do think he will see the field, but I'm not sure that it matters.
Okay, well, then you said that you had a few games. Last week, you didn't like any of the games, and I think that's why we had so much disagreement at the end.
You're
So
right, I
with
didn't. I was like, hate it, hate it, hate it, hate it, hate it, hate it, hate it. And I still
or
had to come up with
it was
7.
either you hate it or didn't have an opinion. Well, that's very difficult when you're trying to find 5 cohesive games between us two. So since you do like more this week, I also like more this week. let's just go ahead and run down the list of the other 5 games that you do like and see if we have any similarity there.
Okay, Bengals +7. I like a lot in this spot. And the reason why, Pam, is because it's the Kansas City Chiefs. And what have we seen lately? They're still being overvalued. They were overvalued last week. Again, I didn't take the Chiefs because of the Chiefs. I took the Chiefs because I wanted to play against a very subpar Raiders team. The Bengals, you've been high on this team. Now, I was against them last week in the contest. I ended up taking the Steelers +2 with the value number there. And I had mentioned I took them in a teaser because getting them up over that touchdown. But that was a AFC North game, right? Those two teams I've always compared, or those 4 teams I've always compared, no matter who they are, no matter what the other team's record is, it's always a fist fight. But I will say this, Browning outside of that game has played extremely well. We also know he's got a couple of really great receivers. Jamar Chase hopefully will be able to come back from that shoulder injury, but he does still have T. Higgins. And Cincinnati doesn't have a very good path to the playoffs, but they're not dead yet. And so they need to get a win here. And it seems like they want to get a win. Bengals, they have got to play a little bit better defense, especially here on the road. Their defense has not been as great on the road as it has been at home. But I will say this, you know who they've been really good against? The Kansas City Chiefs. They play really, really tough against AFC opponents. And again, Kansas City, it's been well documented at this point that this team has issues. Travis Kelce has been very vocal on his podcast. Patrick Mahomes has had outbursts on the sidelines. We've seen yelling between the O-linemen. We've seen issues on the wide receiver core. It doesn't matter. Something is inherently wrong there, whether it's within the culture, whether it's this team is not used to having calls that don't go their way, whether it's they're not used to losing. I think playing against the Chiefs here, laying a touchdown at home would have been a no-brainer probably a couple of years ago. And at this point, I want nothing to do with laying points with the Kansas City Chiefs.
I disagree. Of course, right out of the gate. Of course we have to. So here's the thing though. I actually did like the Bengals initially, and then just like the further that I thought about it, at some point I have to have belief that Casey's offensive floor, as bad as they've been, as inconsistent as it has been, as Mahomes bursting into flames out on the sidelines, can have a productive game against a very bad Cincinnati defense. And I mean bad. Mahomes and company struggling. Cool. You know who hasn't been? Every quarterback who's been playing against Cincinnati. That can be corrected against the Cincinnati defense. 10.7 YPA to a quarterback who hasn't played in 2 years. Mason Rudolph, bad. 300 yards in his first start. Nick Mullins, bad. Now you're talking still Mahomes. And I know that they're having their issues. He has his trust with his wide receivers lacking. But when you are a defense in the Bengals that is dead last in YPA, in yards per completion, anyone and everyone can throw on you. You just have to think that at some point, this overvalue, you're no longer overvalue. We all see it on the sidelines. We see what is happening. There is no overvalue. I think it's lined correctly because the last time Mahomes faced a defense this bad was the Chargers, and they won 31-17, and he had his most productive game of over 400 yards. And Jake Browning, yes, I was high on him. He's turned into a pumpkin. His time is up. 5 interceptions in his last 3 games. The Chiefs' defense is a different animal. This is his first time going into Arrowhead, which still has something to say about that. Just that type of environment. So we're not going to agree. But would I expect anything else to kick off this podcast?
No, you shouldn't at this point. At this point, I don't think we're ever going to agree again.
Like you said, I'll talk to you in 6 weeks. Okay, no. Next game. Let's see what else we got.
Okay. Let's talk about the Seattle. Go ahead. Let's talk about the Seattle Seahawks. Okay. You mentioned Mason Rudolph and what this Bengals defense was able basically to prove with him. And that was that he might be some semblance of a quarterback for the Steelers right now. Both teams sitting just right outside of the playoffs. And prior to him playing, this offense just wasn't explosive, right? There wasn't anything exciting about it. And right out of the gate, it got real exciting. And Seattle's defense is not anything to really write home about. But that's over the course of the entire season. Over the last 2 games, they have really stepped up. And I think we are finally seeing that 12th man defense that should have been all year long. Whether it's Drew Lock or Geno Smith, we've talked about, there's no drop off between these 2 guys. There just
Right.
isn't. And so it doesn't really matter to me. It looks like it will be Geno, but I will say this is going to be a low scoring game. So laying points in a low scoring game does make me a little apprehensive, but I can see Seattle getting off to a strong start here. This is going to be a 17-10 type final, hopefully.
So you do like Seattle.
I do like Seattle.
Okay. I don't have a strong opinion. Like literally, it was one of those I was like, okay, I can make a case for both. I don't have any arguments. Let's go ahead and plug it in to as an option because it's one of the few that you like. And because I don't disagree, we may have to use it later. So what was the going down the list of games that you do like? What else is on there?
So the New Orleans Saints is rather interesting because I like the Saints early on. It was at 3, now 2.5. That's a big time money move, as you know, Pam. These
Right.
NFC South divisional games, I love taking the dog. We've talked about that for years, how that's a play of mine. And again, I haven't laid I haven't taken 2.5 with the Saints here, but I did put them in teasers. I will probably end up getting to the window with this team. Derek Carr is rather frustrating, and I understand that. When we need Derek Carr to go out there as a favorite, usually he doesn't perform. But as an underdog, he can get things accomplished, especially in a divisional game. I know Baker Mayfield has a ton of incentives, and this is probably what's going to keep me off taking the 2.5 in real life and just leaving them in a teaser. Because if Baker Mayfield ends up top 10 in passing, he's got some big time money coming his way. Now, I know that they've been better at home, and this is not some primetime game like it used to be. This is just going to be your average 1 o'clock game. You and I both agreed on the Bucs last week in a blowout
Right.
win over Jacksonville. I think that that's kind of built into this line here. I
Right.
made originally the Bucs -1. So when it hit 3, I should have bet it. I blinked, it was gone. When it came down to 2.5, that told me that somebody really agreed with me here. So I do like the Saints, but again, teaser mainly. Because I kind of wonder how much those incentives come to play. And Baker Mayfield's a gamer, whether anybody wants to admit it or not. This man's playing for his next contract, whether it's with the Bucs or with another team.
So, when you go to the gym or you used to be in CrossFit, right? They have like they have a bell for when you've like accomplished something or like you hit a PR. I think you and I
Yeah,
need a bell for when we agree. Like I would be ringing that bell right now and I would just be like blasting it. Last week you and I were the only agreement in the Bucks. You and I are in agreement with the Saints. I think a lot of people are going to look at the schedule that they played early in the season and it was just like a romping from the Bucks who beat the Saints. Cool. You know what happened? Derek Carr, this is a huge rebound spot compared to that first matchup because he was terrible. He went 9 of 22, but Derek Carr actually entered that game with a concussion, shoulder injury, did not practice all week, still played. So all of that could come into effect. Not only is he healthier now, he's playing more efficient, has major upside because he's now playing behind a better offensive line. He has 6 touchdowns in his last 2 games, but more importantly, 7 sacks in his last 5 compared to 15 in his first 5. Roll some of that fourth quarter momentum that he had last week against the Rams into this Bucs secondary. 12 of 12, 100 yards. Tampa Bay's defense is 27th in YPA and in completion. Blitz at the third highest rate. Carr is good against the blitz. And that's one of the things that I really love looking at. If you're going to blitz heavily, how do you perform? And he has the 6th best completion percentage in the league. Now, the New Orleans offense, quietly 14th in scoring. I was looking at the games and I was like, holy heck, this offense is like also humming. And I was high last week on the Bucs doing so well with their offense. The Saints are doing pretty well too. Get downfield, quick deep shots. Trick play is utilize Chris Olave. He's going to be key. Really, I would be looking at his player props if I was you. He moves all over the field on the outside, lines up in the slot. You and I are in agreement. I've already plugged that in. What's another game that you like?
yay. Okay, so now it starts to get a little dicey, right?
Okay,
Some of this is just not like I love it, not like I'm going to put my money on it. And I've got to pick that 5 because I'm also in the contest by myself where I've got to have that 5th pick. And so I've
right.
got 2 games where I don't love it, but here, let me make a case for a team based on either the line move or some overreaction to injury news, right? Like that's sometimes some of the handicapping that have to go down. Um,
Okay.
the Green Bay Packers +2. Kevin O'Connell, I adore you. When you went on that lovely 6-game winning streak, it was glorious. And that was 6-game winning streak against the spread. But now you have Nick Mullins, who threw for over 400 yards last week against the Detroit Lions and yet did not win the football game because there was 4 interceptions thrown. You've got to know what you have within your quarterback. You throw a pick 6, you're probably going to lose the football game. And he has now thrown 2 pick 6s. Let me tell you, betting on that Vikings team last Christmas Eve almost ruined dinner. I was so pissed off because I knew that I had the right side. And when you have the right side and lose in a game like that, but I did get it back because lovely Brock Purdy threw 4 interceptions for me with the Ravens. I will take it. Sometimes you have those things that are very cyclical. So you got to take the good with the bad. Luckily, the Ravens was a much bigger bet for me than the Vikings. But I did really like the Vikings. And Justin Jefferson last week, sure, he looked like a beast, right? He did. He was the guy off injury. It took him a couple of games. Now he has over 100 receiving yards, 140 receiving yards in the 4 of the 8 games that he actually played this year. Great. But how are they going to avoid turnovers? This Packers defense isn't anything to really write home about, but I do know one thing. If I'm looking at purely quarterbacks, Jordan Love doesn't turn the ball over.
Mm-hmm.
And they have an effective running game. I don't know. This is just one of those types of games where I'm like, all right, I put the Packers in teasers +2 up over the touchdown in a divisional game. Could the Vikings win this game by 3? Yeah, absolutely. But I don't trust Nick Mullins to have a mistake-free game. I just don't.
So we may not see Nick Mullins. We may actually see Josh Dobbs, which is, hey, it's the same thing. They both have terrible numbers when it comes to turnover where he plays. It's replacing one interception per quarterback with another. So there's no difference in that. I will say, I think what is also baked into this line is the fact that Monday Night Football underdogs are have won 10 straight.
Yeah.
And I think that's an automatic plug-in. I like the Vikings. I'm ready to say that trend is going to end because, as much as we're talking about Nick Mullins and all of his interceptions, absolutely, fully agree. Well, you know what? Jordan Love sucks against the Blitz.
I just got a text.
And that is exactly what
this is why being in studio is wonderful. This is why being in studio is wonderful. Jaron Hall is starting for the Vikings. Wow.
There you go. Upside.
Wow.
If you're not turning the ball over.
Is it upside?
It is. If you can
stats, because I don't even know.
Let's look them up.
Okay, Jaron Hall is announced. Okay, correct. Wow, 15 minutes ago. Okay, that makes sense. So he played when last?
He's a rookie
against the Falcons and against the Packers. Okay.
You know what? I will say in 10 attempts. 10 attempts. That's all I need to see. That he had 0 interceptions. Perfect. Plug in the Vikings.
Okay.
That is literally all you need because it doesn't matter who is behind center. What matters is there's turnovers. Why? Because the Vikings defense is still a really good defense.
So do we? Right. And I would agree with that. And he has weapons. But here, I don't know if I can trust Jaron Hall not to make mistakes. That's my problem.
But the Packers defense is not one to force interceptions, to force turnovers.
Correct.
They don't have that type of defense.
I would agree with that. That is fair.
I mean, they gave even Bryce Young had a pretty serviceable game.
Let's put down the Vikings on the long list. We'll put down the Vikings on the long list because I don't want to see what the actual line is. This is not like a top favorite. This is not like a favorite game of mine, so I'm okay to leave it alone. Right. Yeah, we'll just write it down on the long list in case we don't find anything else. It's off the board currently. We'll take a peek at it here and see if maybe there isn't some line value from the contest line. Okay.
What is your other game then?
That's really about it. I wanted to try to make a case for the Broncos. Speaking of young, inexperienced quarterbacks, Jared Stidham will be starting for the Broncos. I do not love this Broncos team, but I have to wonder if they didn't love Russell Wilson. And now this isn't a resurgence and an overreaction to him sitting out for this team. I mean, Sean Payton basically drew his line in the sand and said, Russell's not our guy. And that's a pretty hard line. They said they basically gave him the Derek Carr treatment that the Raiders did last year. Let's hope he doesn't get hurt. That way we can trade him.
Well, I don't think I can touch that game. That was one of those where I was like, nope, I have no idea.
I don't blame you. But at 3.5, all I'm playing on is that it's Jared Stidham as the starter. And Easton Stick looked pretty dang good last week against the Bills. Gave him a nice scare. Yeah. So I kind of wonder if there isn't some overreaction there. Outside of that,
Let me intrigue you
I
then into some of the ones that I did like.
Okay.
Um, it's ugly, and this might be my best bet. This is one of the 2 games that I really love. Panthers plus 6.5 to the Jaguars. Do you have inside do you at least agree or opposite on that?
No, I want nothing to do with your Jags. Nothing to do with them. This team
Perfect.
is the
Thanks,
Kansas
Panthers.
City Chiefs right now. They are broken. Trevor Lawrence is broken. You said last week, "Hey, I'm going to assume Trevor Lawrence is a go until he's not." And you were right. They will keep marching him out there when they could put out CJ Beathard, but they won't do it. So I'm going to go ahead and guess
Exactly.
that Trevor is going to play. And the bookmakers marching out of 6.5 tells you all you need to know here. Why not just hang a 7? Jags are going to take money regardless, but Panthers have covered a couple of games now in a row, gotten a couple of wins. Maybe they're starting to click. I don't know.
And
I would
that's
only
kind
take
of
the
what I'm
Panthers or pass.
That's what I'm hanging my hat on is that Trevor Lawrence, he is a health liability. I don't care that you are playing. You had a knee issue, an ankle issue, a concussion, 0 time off. And what has that resulted in? In his last 4 games, 0-4, 5 interceptions, 10 sacks. The lack of production could be from missing full weeks of practice and you're still suiting up. That's a problem. So I think there is a chance actually that maybe this week we might actually not see him play. But if he does, and even if it is CJ Beathard instead, I like what I'm seeing from Carolina. It's encouraging. If we can use a word for the Panthers, they are encouraging. They knocked off Atlanta 2 weeks ago. They nearly upset Green Bay last week, losing by a last minute field goal. And Bryce Young, he's coming off his best performance, career high 312 yards, 0 turnovers. Build on that. Close out your rookie season strong because Bryce Young actually has an opportunity to do just that. Jacksonville's defense in the last 7 games. Swiss cheese! League high completion rate, bottom 2 in YPA and touchdowns allowed. Young doesn't have the resume right now, and it is only a 1 game sample size, but at least it's telling me that there's upside and a 6.5 dog. My only worry is that Panthers are better at home, but I mean, it's the Jags who just can't, they're not good. Would you
Not
like to
right
plug
now. They're
this
not.
in?
Yeah, I vote we plug that in. I like that we agree there.
Okay.
So
I
right
will
now we
plug
have
this.
Colts plugged in, Saints plugged in, Panthers plugged in.
Colts minus 3.5. Yes. Colts, Panthers, and then Saints. And then let me run through some of the other options. So we never do Thursday night football games, but how do you feel about the Jets?
Uh, the same way I felt about the Jets all season long. Who's their starting quarterback? Zach Wilson still has a concussion, right?
Yeah.
I think
So
it's
it's
so
not Zach
easy. I
Wilson.
think it's so easy to put the Browns in a teaser. Like it's the easiest teaser I've ever made in my entire life, which could tell me that the Jets could win this football game or that it ends up 21-20 final. I do think that the Jets offense is better, more improved over the last couple of weeks. How they almost blew that lead to the Commanders was insane. What a game that I was like, I don't even want to talk about this game. It's going to be the worst game of the week. Ended up to be really exciting in the second half. But
Right.
no, I don't care. I really don't. I don't want to lay 7.5 with the Browns here. The Browns, everybody's ready to give Joe Flacco comeback player of the year. He's just the
I
new
know.
guy. He's probably going to be my quarterback in Denver again.
I really like the Jets. Oh, this was the other game that I was like, I was in another group chat and I was like, is Jets really my best bet this week? Do I want to do that? Because yes, this is like, what do we talk about frequently in football throughout the season? Buy low, sell high. And like, you could not sell more high than on Joe Flacco right now, who's looking all types of Rico Suave down the field with his beard and his perfect hair, and is like he's 38 and he's like aging with fine wine. Like now he's like, yeah, I feel like it's just like way too much for at least a Jets defense that is still really good and can absolutely apply the pressure to Flacco because at least 2 weeks ago against like a very similar pass rush in Chicago, he had 3 interceptions. He still produced 374 yards. Yeah, he could absolutely bomb it. But I think when you're one of those quarterbacks, and what I like about when you're one of those quarterbacks who's absolutely going to bomb it on every play, like they lead in passing pass attempts right now by like 20 because they are doing nothing but passing. That leads to interceptions. That leads to turnovers. That leads to like defensive touchdowns, short field positions for the other side. So it's really more of it really is not a huge reason to like back the Jets as it is. This is Flacco at his peak. And now you're laying 7.5 on a Thursday night.
Against a Jets defense that's got to play better, right? They basically said, hey, listen, we're sticking with Robert Saleh. We are sticking with Aaron Rodgers. Like they're kind of bought in right now for at least another 6-7 months until season starts back up. I think the Jets are not a bad spot here at 7.5. I mean, we know seven's a huge key number. Would this surprise you in the slightest to have it be a 24-17 final? No, of course not. We win by the hook. I'm okay with it.
And I'm actually gonna name this as my best bet. Can I do that
Okay.
since it's a Thursday game?
Yeah. Yeah, you might want to go take a shower afterwards, but you can definitely have it.
I'm gonna feel so gross. Like I'm feeling so like this is like the happiest that I've been being in my apartment. I'm like, oh, I get to lay on my couch. I got my backdrop, and then I'm betting the Jets. But like that paid off for me last week. Like that was the anyway. Fine. I'm gonna go ahead and plug that in. That's what we're doing. It is the Jets. So we have your best bet of Colts -3.5, the Jets, the Panthers, and the Saints. Let me see if I can entice you into one more. How do you feel about Titans Texans?
Look, what did we talk about this last time? You were like, oh, love the Titans. This is the spot. Derrick Henry's going to run all over him. And then they just shut his ass down.
They did. I know.
But the Texans are not the same without CJ Stroud. They just aren't.
Well, he may be playing,
That's what I keep hearing.
which is why
But
which is why the line is 4.5.
And that might
Without
be the
him, this is
truth.
probably closer to like 1.5.
Let me look and see if I can find anything definitive about him. It's 5.5 actually now. So I'm going to go ahead and guess he is playing. Correct.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. If CJ Stroud's playing, I'm okay with laying it with the Texans. It is 5.5.
Oh, I was actually on the Titans side
Oh, okay. Well, tell me why you like the Titans.
because it's a fade on CJ Stroud. This is also one of those like overreaction type of things. Oh, Stroud is back in the mix. Let's lay just like a dumb number. Okay, well, you had like a scary ass head injury. And before that, you were unproductive. You had one touchdown in his last two starts. His offensive line just like went to complete crap as of late. 17 sacks in his last 5 games compared to 11 in his first 5. Even still, we have seen with this Texans deep offense that you can put up all the numbers that you want, have all the most incredible passing stats, passing touchdowns, put up 5 scores, and still not cover a 3-point spread.
Well, here's the other thing. So it's 4.5 in one of the contests. It's 5.5 in the other. And my co-host
like getting non-value.
Used to cover the Titans, and he just said Will Levis is practicing this week. So I think that bodes well. I do think he's more light than Ryan Tannehill, and I do think that he's more explosive than Ryan Tannehill from the quarterback position. And you know me, Pam, I love divisional road underdogs, which is why I like the Texans the first time around. Derrick Henry, are they going to be able to shut him down 2 games in a row?
And that's fine because I was also under the impression that Will Levis could be getting the start because even if it is Will Levis, like what we saw 2 weeks ago should still be the exact same game plan. Utilize some of those play action passes, focus down the middle of the field where Houston struggles the most. Houston linebacker Blake Cashman, he has been out for a couple of weeks and that interior has been exploited. You're getting large chunk gains with Houston short on defense right now. They have a lot of injuries to that defensive front. This is why they are 27th in YPA allowed. The ability is there for Levis. He had his best game against a Miami defense. Houston is 30th in completion, 31st in YPA. Like, yes, I would love to see Will Levis instead of Ryan Tannehill, but honestly, I don't think that like there's really a big difference when you're going up against this bad of a defense.
Look, I agree with you. And it is CJ Stroud did practice again today. So it looks like he will be cleared. And that's probably why we are seeing 5.5 start to pop up. Bottom line, Houston as a dog, love to back them. Houston as a favorite, not so much. This is not a good enough team to start laying points with, particularly over a field goal to a divisional dog. I like the Titans.
You like the Titans. Great. I think that's our 5, but let me go ahead and make sure. Running through our list. Patriots, Bills. Is there anything that you like more? Ravens. I know you were high on the Ravens last week. 3.5 for the Dolphins.
I am high on the Ravens, but that line move coming in, I think it's going to be a really close game. Both teams need a win in the AFC here. Ravens win, they get the number 1 seed, and I believe home field advantage. Dolphins have revenge with the Bills next week on deck. That could be an interesting statement as well. I think at 3, I don't really want a part of it. At 4, I look towards the Dolphins, thinking this would be a field goal type game. But ultimately, right now, I think I'm just going to bet the over, Pam.
Rams, Giants, any opinion? Stronger opinion than anything we've
Okay,
talked about?
so not stronger. I thought that the Rams -6 early in the week might be a play for me. Giants off a knockout, dragout fight with the Eagles that play the Eagles next week. But Sharp
Mhm.
Group came in and bet the Giants at +6. It's now 4.5 in the contest for the Rams.
Right.
I'm like, what am I
Yeah.
missing here? Granted, Tyrod Taylor is a better quarterback than Tommy DeVito. I almost called him Danny DeVito. But seriously, I don't understand the love. I can also confirm that the football what the fucks got some action at 13.5. I don't know why anybody would want to take them other than the fact that it could be a flat spot coming off that Ravens loss on Monday night to the Niners and they play the Rams next week. Maybe the Niners don't care. They just go in, get the win by a touchdown and leave. I don't understand that play whatsoever.
When it comes to I think this might end up being the Rams. I like the Rams first off. Also in agreement with you if the line moved from 6 to 4.5, that's interesting. This might end up being something that I post to Twitter later on as like the weekend best bet. Since I want to do Jets tonight. But this is really like a fade on the Giants offense. I don't care who's behind center. My whole question is, can you keep pace? Because not only do you have another quarterback switch with DeVito from Tyrod Taylor, yes, who's probably better, but you are also like a very one-dimensional offense with Saquon Barkley. You become predictable, you become easier to defend. They have the fewest first downs, the fewest total yards, fewest points. How are you going to keep pace against the Rams offense right now, who's absolutely clicking? I mean, and they're not backing down. This is not a matchup to back down on. Quarterback Matthew Stafford, multiple touchdowns in 5 straight. If he does struggle, which is why there's probably interest in backing the Giants, is because he is not good against the blitz. They blitz at the second highest rate. And against the blitz, Stafford is 27th in completion with only 3 touchdowns. My argument to counter that, turn to the run game. You have now running back Kyron Williams, who's on a roll. And he's been like a bowling ball knocking down pins. He has 3 straight 100-yard games. Make it 4. Use his player props because the Giants defense, 4th most rushing yards allowed, 2nd most yards per carry. He himself can cover this number. I don't think it's going to be high scoring at all. I like the under, but I can totally see a scenario where the Rams are like win this game like 24-10, like 21-12, like something just like really low. And because you have that better run game though with the Rams, hey, now you have like a really dynamic offense. I just see a huge mismatch here. I think there's 2 things that can be true when it comes to this because you're like, I don't really understand it. What am I missing? I think 2 things can be true that the Rams scored 28 points in their last 5, but in this scenario, they can be held to under that and still get a cover. What I also like is that the Giants are on a short rest. They played Monday. Rams are on a long rest. They played Thursday. I'm pretty sure this is going to be like my weekend best bet.
Do you like them better than the Panthers, Titans, or Saints? Because I do not.
What? Okay, then leave it off. You feel good
Okay.
about our card down
I do.
because we're still trying to get 5-0.
We are. And we're running out of time if you want to play the Jets.
Okay, we'll do that. So then those are going to be our 5 against the spread contest picks. Kelly's best bet is Colts -3.5 to the Raiders. Mine is the Jets. Dang it. The Jets +7.5 to the Browns. Panthers +6.5 to the Jags. Saints +3 to the Bucs. Titans +4.5 to the Texans. Yeah. That's our 5 against the spread contest pick.
This is probably the ugliest card we've had all year. Like this is like really gross. Saints
And we didn't even
Panthers,
really disagree.
Jets, Titans,
Like at
Colts,
all.
which is probably not a good thing. Now we're gonna go on 5. Way to go, Pam.
No, it's going to be 5-0 because remember, it's money when we actually do agree. Do make sure to follow Kelly on X at Kelly in Vegas. You can follow me on X at Pamela M35, and also make sure to follow all of the WagerTalk both on YouTube and on X as well. And that does it. That's it. We're calling it quits. If we go 5-0, I retire. That is it for another episode of
And we never talk to each other ever again. We go 5-0, and we never have to talk about football.
Only for caviar and champagne.
Exactly.
All right. That does it for another episode of Stack of Stats. Good luck with your bets.